Thank you for joining us. I'm Paul Wilson.
And I'm Chris Ehmke.
And this is Diesel Performance Podcast. Chris, we got a really exciting episode today. Yeah. I'm thinking that there's going to be a lot of fun stuff to talk about. Before we do that, of course, we want to give a shout out to our sponsors. XDP has this really cool extra direct fit intercooler. It's for the 03 to 06 Ford 6-liter Power Stroke. It's a bar and plate core design. It's 100% TIG welded ends tanks, so it's solid, man. Like they've tested it up to 120 plus PSI. It is a rock and roll unit, and you can also have it like customized in whatever color you want to get it in. So I think if you got a 6-liter and you're looking for an intercooler replacement that's going to be able to handle more performance and be durable and reliable, this is a really good option for you.
Another one of our sponsors, Calibrated Power Duramax Tuner. One of the cool products that they've recently released is L5d Tuning. So it's unique. So L5d is a spinoff off of the L5p. This is going to be your 45, 5500 cab chassis style trucks. They are derated from the factory. They have some crazy speed limiters in play. So guys are calling in complaining about that type of stuff. So the boys over at Calibrated Power offer single tune and switch on the fly power level options. Guys have been really, really happy. Good positive feedback.
It's night and day difference from what I've heard. So it's like I hate my truck and it can't tow up a hill to this is amazing to drive and I love having it. Thank God for
I want the big truck to drive like my little truck. That's what I get. So,
Hey, Exergy has their winter blend additive. It has an anti-gel component and increased lubricity. It's really a no-brainer, guys. If you're out there and you're running around in cold weather, especially for anybody who parks outside, dear God, or really cold garages, make sure you throw some additive in. We're getting the cold snap here. I know it was like 1 degree when I was coming.
It was negative 12 a little bit ago from what I was reading.
Not my type of weather, but if we're going to have to deal with it, like I said, get yourself prepared, get some additive in the tank. Chris, you use the Exergy stuff.
I do. It's been
so
great.
You just posted it on Facebook.
The guys over at Exergy were nice enough. They sent us over a case. So the GM here, Jamie, Tim, and R&D, a couple of the guys that have diesels, we started handing that stuff out. And, I'll tell you what, cold starts in the TDI, which my TDI is never friendly to begin with. It's nice to have, and then I add some into my Ram, since it's for the winter. So it's just smart to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Calibrated Power also has awesome Cummins Easy Link tuning. It's one of the most popular products in their catalog, especially for like tuning all together. So they cover switch on the fly for the 13 to 18, 6.7 liters, and then a 5 tune pack for the 19 to 21s. You can add 100 horsepower with tune only, no need to delete. And then, of course, for all you 68 RFE guys, Chris, you can probably
trans tuning's a big deal.
It is.
Yeah. I mean, it's not about adding the power to the truck. It's about the trans tuning, in all reality. If you can get that trans to shift more friendly around the torque curve of the motor, help with some of the downshifts, upshifts, converter lockup stuff, help with line pressures, it really changes the dynamic of how the truck operates.
Absolutely. So that's a great product for you guys to go and check out. You can check out the Duramax Tuner products over at DuramaxTuner.com, as well as the Cummins, Power Stroke, EcoBoost, all that other stuff. Calibrated Power kind of lives over there.
Speaking of tuning, Paul.
Yeah.
What do we have today?
So I'm excited. This is a fun one where we get to kind of poke at some of the things that we see in the industry. So I think previously we had done top 5 tuning myths and how to destroy your DPF. Now we're taking a look at lazy tuners make Smokey diesels. And really, it's probably not even just tuners that we want to pin this on.
That's clickbait, man. That's awesome.
It's probably better phrased as like uneducated diesel performance enthusiasts make Smokey diesels. That's probably the most accurate way to describe this. Chris, I think when we do hone in on the tuners, though, there's this really basic formula for making power in a diesel, and that's more fuel. Just as simple as that. Just if you throw more fuel at a diesel, you'll likely make more power. Now that power has a diminishing point of return, so at a certain point you're throwing more fuel. Yeah, you might add 1 horsepower, but you're gaining 200 EGTs. That's just a dramatic example.
And I think too, the thing to point out is depending on the year of the truck that you're referring to, there is a difference between electronically controlled wastegates, no wastegates, mechanical wastegates, variable vane turbochargers. All of these things, depending on the era of the diesel motor, is going to dictate boost pressure. So there is this limitation of turbochargers boost and what that turbocharger's efficiency range is, given the added fuel that's being added to the truck. Usually with a lot of these trucks, you're going to be limited by air before you're limited by the fuel, especially in the common rail trucks.
And I think even as we look at like pushing things into a tuning kind of conversation here, is like as you're adding fuel, no matter what turbo you have on there, you likely can add too much fuel for what that turbocharger is capable of, right? It's just like you said. So as guys are tuning it, they might say, hey, look, I'm seeing more horsepower on the dyno. I keep adding more fuel. Eventually, you're going to create smoke. You're going to get more fuel than air. Now, in older trucks, you had to really watch this visually and watch your EGTs, and you could add some aftermarket gauges, but like boost control has only gotten better. Like boost and air fuel relationship has only gotten more well-defined by the factory ECM and factory gauges throughout the
in
years.
the newer trucks, you have lambda control in the ECM, which, tuners that are tuning emissions on, and some of the newer trucks that they're looking for clean smoke output, they're going to use those tables. One of the big things that I think there's a real common misperception is, well, my truck doesn't smoke, add more fuel. Well, you have injection on time, right? So injection on time is the amount of time that the injectors are open for. Sure. And that is going to change by load RPM, and torque output, right?
Yeah.
As that engine's coming into its power band. Just because the truck doesn't smoke, like there's a difference between a properly tuned vehicle and a truck that is tuned poorly, right? The whole case of this podcast, you'll see a lot of times where guys will add too much fuel down low in the no boost or low boost category.
Yeah.
And then as the turbo comes up on boost, it starts to clear up. Well, there's ways to not play with up top and play with down low to help with that smoke output for more drivability or better drivability.
Sure. And again, if you were in a non-VGT truck that doesn't have any lambda control and things like that, and you wanted to get your turbo to spool, the theory was always throw a bunch of fuel at it down low. Right. That'll create a bunch of exhaust pressure. That exhaust pressure will drive your turbo. Your turbo will light quicker. Now that also results in like a ton of smoke. Smoke's bad. Right. That's the reality of what we've learned throughout the years of diesel performance, is that smoke is not good for your truck. It's not the best way to make performance. It is not the sign of a strong diesel. It's the sign of likely a flaw. Now, this isn't going to always be true, because if you go to a sled pull and you see a truck that's loaded down and running at peak and it's pouring smoke out of the stacks,
Two different situations,
right? Like we're talking about street-driven trucks that are going to take off from a stoplight and they black out the intersection before they get to 10 miles an hour. That's a poorly tuned truck, or a truck with a physical problem in it.
Well, let's talk about what are some of those characteristics, right? So you talk about the smoke output, right? So we'll cut the environment out of the equation on this, because this isn't like, clean trucks, this and that. But let's talk about what you're doing to the engine, okay? The first thing that comes to my mind, and I think about like my old 01 second gen years back, where you're actually washing out the cylinder walls because of so much fuel being added, that's going to deteriorate the longevity of the motor over time.
That's right. Also, you're running at higher EGTs, so you're rapidly heating and then cooling, because things are going to cool off. All of the metal components and gasketry and everything else that goes into your engine, high EGTs are bad. So if we see a lot of smoke, that's almost always accompanied by really, really high EGTs, which can be detrimental. And then also, of course, there's just like you're pissing money away, because it's unburnt fuel, meaning you could have used that fuel more efficiently and gotten better mile per gallon. So if you're having a lot of smoke, and I guess if you don't mind having really poor fuel mileage, there's a correlation there. There's something that you need to be aware of as a diesel owner, that if you are having really bad fuel mileage and you are having a lot of smoke, you need to look into it.
It's funny, guys get into this. I know I got into this because I was able to take an old mechanical injected truck, turn the fuel up, blow a little smoke. Like that was the
cool.
attraction.
Sure.
And as time progresses.
When you were 16.
Yeah. I mean, I was 19, but yeah. And as you get a little older, you start to realize, like, okay, I'm going to hook up to a trailer for the first time, right? Or, whatever you're going to be towing. Now you're using the truck in more of a recreational characteristic. You don't want that smoke getting on the trailer. You don't want to clean more than you have to,
That's right. Same if you're a landscaper and you got all your equipment behind you in an open trailer. You don't want to roll coal all over it. It's just nonsense. Yeah. That's why I think, like, as we look at these, we know that there's other physical components where if you see a lot of smoke, it could be a boost leak. God, we've talked about boost leaks a lot.
Yeah. Now you're getting to more of the mechanical stuff, right?
Right. There's mechanical reasons, right? You could have failed injection, failed injector, or something wrong within the fuel injection system. That could cause excessive smoke. But I think what we see really, really commonly is just tuning mistakes.
Yeah.
Just people, kind of like you had said before, it's just kind of doing it wrong.
Well, I think the first stage or the first era of this was a box programmer, right? You know,
Sure.
you had your one is all plug-in and play style programmer, and then you have guys that learn how to custom tune, but they learn how to tune off of those box programmers.
All right.
So you have this era of what is right and wrong, and there's guys that have been tuning trucks for years, but they've maintained that old technology or that old style tuning. So it is common to get into a newer, truck that, had emissions fell off,
Right.
whatever,
Yeah.
and the trucks are just bellowing smoke. The ECM has the same ability and architecture for that guy doing the tune as another guy that's going to tune that truck emissions on. So that theory of, oh, well, that's what the truck is going to do, tune emissions on, isn't necessarily the case, because the ECMs are sophisticated. Like, there are these tables in play because technology has advanced so much over the years to where you can control that. That characteristic on that older truck is all based on the fact that whoever is tuning that truck chooses to create the calibration to do that.
Right.
So
Right. No, that's a really good point, man, because it lays out people in a very clear path of what are you trying to get out of your vehicle, right? Like, are you interested in setting your vehicle up to be efficient, to have low EGTs, to be able to tow? We all want power. That's why we're modifying our vehicles, right?
That's the goal, right?
That's
I
we're
want
all
better
after
throttle
that.
response. I want better power, broader power band. I want to be able to lower EGTs or manage the ability to manage EGTs.
Yeah.
But everyone's common goal is either better response or they want to tow more efficiently, right? Like, that's generally the feedback that we get over at Calibrated
That's
Power.
what we're looking for, right? Yeah, absolutely. So we do run into guys who end up with stupid builds, and I use this phrase
Don't
not
use
to
stupid.
not to really poke at anybody specifically, but we do kind of talk about these builds where, hey, I got just something crazy. I got an S472 single on my LML with all stock. I haven't done anything else to it. The only thing I did was swap out to an S472 and delete the emissions. Bro, that's probably not going to be a great driving truck in most scenarios. Like, you probably need some other modifications to get that build all the way there.
Right. But there are guys that do it in stages and things like that.
Sure, yeah, understandable.
But there's
I
gonna
remember I
be-
drove a deleted LMM with an S480 single, like, back in, 14, when, nobody knew how to tune them. Nobody knew why on earth you would do this. Stock fuel, stock trans, S480 single, and, up and down the streets on the back roads, I'm just like, dude, this thing feels like it has a MAP sensor problem.
yeah.
Like, there's nothing. It's just pouring out smoke. And then all of a sudden it all ramps up and hits. And we've talked about, how much fun, a big single is. But then there's, a boxed S480. We're not talking SXE. We're not talking about billet wheels. We're talking about, the most basic, cheapest S480 you could slap on this thing. It just was not a great build, just altogether. And hey, I know that guy and that truck got to where they were going.
Yeah.
But there was a long time that there was no amount of tuning that was going to fix that, right? There are things you can tune around. There are things you can do better in your tuning to help with it. And then there's just certain things that there's physical limitations.
Well, I always think about, I go back to, 10, 12 years ago, and when I had my second gen, I had a 366 on that truck. Right?
Yeah.
A bigger Charger for a
It
VT
is,
motor.
sure.
And I had big injectors. I had some, box programming in that truck. There wasn't custom tuning for that thing back then. And the truck was so heavy with smoke, it would bellow and bellow and bellow, and it would take a while for that turbo to spool.
Yeah.
Well, I ended up downsizing the injector slightly and playing around with the tuning. I went with a different tuning platform that gave me the ability to play slightly.
Okay.
And I was actually able to clean up some of the fuel, and the turbo actually spooled quicker. So there is this whole, not more fuel is better. When you compare it to, like you said earlier, the sled pull guys, these are trucks that are working in the most max effort way possible. And these are guys that if they're able to get a turbocharger to last 5 or 6 hooks, they're doing something right. That just goes to show how much heat that cool, I'm in the stands watching this truck just bellow smoke, it has its repercussions.
Yeah.
There are those risks involved.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if we're talking about what kind of tuning parameters do actually impact smoke output, right? Let's talk about fuel control. You mentioned fuel injector on time. Can you walk walk our audience through that a little bit further? What other fuel kind of tables are going to impact smoke output?
So, I mean, mainly when a tuner is going to tune, right, they're going to play with an injection on time. You have a pre-injection, a main event, and a post-injection event. So common rails tend to have 3 injection events. Fuel pressure, right? And between those tables, it's going to equal out what's called MM3, which is the total volume of fuel being used, okay? If you have low fuel pressure, that could cause a less efficient atomization in the cylinder. That could cause smoke output. Or depending on how you're ramping up the injection on time, that is ultimately going to have a role based on how much air is in the motor at that given time. And then you have the lambda control, or in like some of the older Cummins trucks, you have boost limit fueling, which boost limit fueling is really unique. When I was playing around with the 590 CMs, basically I can smoothen out how the engine is coming, how the engine's going to inject fuel based on the fuel curve, based on airflow of the map sensor. So you're actually able to control air fuel off of that table to clean the truck up.
It essentially is like an air fuel ratio.
Barometer, right?
Exactly. Is you're like, hey, this is, don't give it more fuel than air. Like, we know how much air is here. Let's limit that.
So, like, that table was interesting because the truck was getting the fuel, right? You run that truck out to 2,800 microseconds, 2,700 microseconds on a stock injector, whatever. The fuel is there. It's just about how it ramped in. So you get a guy that calls, oh, I need more fuel down low. No, you have plenty of fuel. Like, the truck's responsive. It's doing what it's doing. Well, it's not blowing any smoke. Well, right. That's because it's tuned correctly.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So then you could do the opposite and throw like a boost fooler in there, which basically bypasses that table altogether.
Right.
And tells the ECM, hey, we're making 30 pounds of boost, dump the fuel. So.
And when we get into boost parameters, as you get into variable vanes, you have a lot of control over applying variable vanes and things of that nature, that where you can hit target boost numbers, or say, hey, based on this target boost, like if you're going to request this much boost, apply this much vane, and kind of work yourself through that scenario. There's not nearly as much control over boost and creating boost as there is fuel. Right, just the way that a diesel works, even with a variable vane turbo that's extremely responsive, it's a lot about being responsive. It's not a ton about kind of leading first, right? So that's what we find out of turbochargers, and then timing, I think, is the other area where we hear a lot of talk about timing and smoke output, which makes sense to me in some aspect. But maybe you could walk our audience through a little bit deeper dive into that.
Yeah, so timing is basically how the engine is coming up to top dead center, how that injector is injecting fuel, and ensuring that you're getting the injector to inject fuel into the piston bowl in an efficient manner, right? You don't want the fuel spraying into the bowl outside of the piston bowl or before it gets to its detonation point, essentially.
Yeah.
So there is a point of too much timing, there is a point of too little timing, and there is a point of playing with timing based on the turbocharger that's being utilized to kind of trick it into boost, right? Or help aid that, turbo to come up.
That's it. Exactly. So it's about how do we get the most efficient combustion out of the fuel and air mixed together within the cylinder. Right, and that's really what timing is it's dialing in that combustion event, because we don't have spark like in a gas vehicle where we can control spark and things like that. So timing is like, I want to say generally from what I've seen with tuners, timing is like one of the last things that you go into adjust in the tables. As you start to work your way through it, you want to make sure, hey, we got the fuel. We got the air.
You want to make sure air fuel's there.
Okay. Now we dial in the tuning to kind of give it that last finesse to get everything perfect. And I'm sure there's other people out there who do it completely the opposite way. That's fine.
And I'm sure if we had Nick on this podcast, he would be saying, well, we would do it this, and this. He's not here. You got us.
He'd be able to be a little bit more detailed. Maybe that's something that we can explore in the future. But for now, I think that this was kind of a good wrap-up of talking about how does tuning and smoke output, like where is that correlation, what's possible, what's not possible. So we hope this pointed you guys in a good direction. Stick around, guys. We got more Diesel Performance podcasts coming at you. I know we're going to be hearing from our other co-hosts.
All right, guys, here we are. Anthony Brunini, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm just so excited.
Me too.
Oh, God. Okay.
I got news.
Yeah, you got some news. So we were chatting a little bit before air. Some crazy stuff in the industry going on.
Quite a bit of stuff going on right now.
So what do we got?
Well, a few episodes ago, we spoke about Rudy's Truck Jam.
Yep.
I think we recapped the fall.
Yeah, I think Rudy's, it's like the pinnacle. That is the start of the season and the end of the season. They have a spring and a fall jam. And the spring jam pretty much kicks off racing season for ODSS and a lot of the diesel racing across the country. And then everything kind of shuts down in the fall for Rudy's. And they've held it for years down in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Got shaken up a little bit.
Okay.
So, I mean, like you're saying, it kicks off the racing. There's a show and shine. There's a lot of vendors.
Yep.
There's a lot going on, and it's a huge event. Piedmont Dragway is no longer hosting it. They had some, it's pretty vague on the details as of now, but they posted on something on Instagram about a week ago saying Piedmont Dragway is no longer hosting. Initially, they canceled it. They canceled the whole deal. They said, we're done. You know, there's issues that were unable to be resolved. But Wagler stepped up, and they're going to host it. Come this spring, so that's going to be nice. I mean,
so a little closer to home for us. Wagler's out of Indiana, so the event's going to be moving from North Carolina to Indiana. I've seen Wagler picking up a couple of these types of events. You know, Shides, now Rudy's. They have a really nice compound, if you will. So they offer a really nice facility for this type of stuff. So I'm sure there's going to probably be more to come with details and whatnot on that.
As details of the event, I mean, spring is getting closer and closer. I feel like that kind of segues
55 days.
Into the next 55 days.
55 days.
Jesus. And then that kind of segueing into the springtime and summer, UCC's coming up.
Okay.
I mean, we all know that's a big one. We go pretty much every year. We've got a booth. I mean, there's racing out the wazoo. There's a show of shine. There's everything there.
Now, one of the things that's unique about UCC was last year was the first year where they changed the dates up because we were getting bombarded with some bad weather over a few years. So they're hosting the event. It's this year from the 3rd to the 5th of June. Right?
Yes, 3 through 5 for June, excuse me, because they would do it in like a month prior. They do it in the beginning of May.
Yeah, in beginning of May, and you know, May is a pretty rough time of year for the Midwest, to say the least. You don't know what you're going to get.
Exactly.
So if you guys haven't gotten your tickets yet for UCC, you could go to UCC's website. They are selling 1-day and 3-day passes. But again, guys, that's going to be June 3rd through June 5th.
Yep. I'm trying to think. I mean, a lot of people are already posting. I mean, aside from tickets, like, people are excited. People are ramping up. You see builds getting posted.
Yep.
People what they're doing. So it's nice to see that. I mean, it's January and we're 6 months out.
It's the Super Bowl of diesel, right?
Exactly.
Like, it is the biggest event of the year. They have everything. They have drag racing. They have sled pulling. They have you know, the dyno. But then they also have a show and shine that has grown leaps and bounds over the last few years.
Yeah.
The DPI Expo. So pretty much all of your favorite vendors in the diesel industry are going to be at this event with a booth displaying, you know, what they've been working on, you know, that year and years prior for display. So you get to put, you know, faces to the names, shake some hands, you know, network, right?
That's
essentially.
the fun part. I mean, seeing all this stuff is nice, and being able to meet the people in person and catch up with friends every year, that's fun also.
So that event's grown leaps and bounds. So I think, you know, they didn't do it in 2020, right, with COVID. 2021 they did it. I know I didn't attend. I'll be going this year. You did go last year, right? You'll be there this year, I'm sure. But it's just crazy to see that event grow, and even through some of the hurdles that, you know, we're dealing with here in the U.S., you know, that event's still going on. Yeah,
nice to see everybody get together. I mean, and especially, like, you know, talking about Rudy's Truck Jam, like Wagler picking up, so the event stays and everyone get together and have fun. Doing that in Indiana at UCC is going to be nice. I'd say really that's what I've got for now.
Cool. Well, I'm sure as more details are outlined with the Rudy stuff, you'll keep us in the loop on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, man. Well, we appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Thanks.
All right, folks, we're here with our remote support expert, Sean Lynn. Sean, how the hell are you?
Great. How are you, Paul?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for asking. Sean, you come on the show to talk to us about some of the remote support that you have to help customers with over at Calibrated Power and the tuning team and turbo team. What do you got for us today?
So today is a customer basically just called in after buying a RevMax 750 built trans for his Cummins, and he just wanted to be sure he was on the proper tuning for that.
Okay. That's a big purchase. You know, that's not a cheap upgrade. We're not throwing an intake on the truck. Putting a full RevMax built trans underneath our Cummins. What year was it? Do you know?
It was 2015, I believe.
2015. Okay, so not a cheap truck in today's market. That might be $1 million. All right, so he calls in. He says, hey, I just put this trans in it. He's running emissions-equipped tuning on the truck.
Yep, he has our Easy Link tuning.
Has our Easy Link tuning. And he wanted to verify, hey, what trans file should I run? Because we have a couple up there on the cloud, right?
Yeah, we have, I believe, 4 or 5 different built trans files, and he just wanted to be sure for warranty purposes on his trans.
What information did RevMax give him? What kind of parameters was he looking for?
So they sent him a sheet that basically specifies what the pressure is supposed to be when the exhaust brake is on, when you're in park, when you're driving, between the gears and stuff. There's a whole chart on it that he sent over to us.
Gotcha. Okay. So what did you do once you got that information?
So we've been selling RevMax transmissions for years, obviously, but basically what we did, because he was a little concerned, because RevMax told him, you know, if you don't meet this criteria, we're going to void your warranty.
Right. They're very specific about what they need out of it.
I sent it over to Tim in our tuning department to have him basically update the file for this customer and anybody else for that matter who would like exact specifications that they call for. And we have an updated tune for him in the cloud now, and other customers as well.
Awesome, man. That's nice and easy. How long did it take to turn everything around and get him taken care of, from when he called in to when he had a solution?
So he called yesterday sometime. He was just unsure because he actually had a dealership install it.
Oh, wow.
And they said that the truck was shifting hard, like bone stock trans. So that trans, guaranteed it's going to shift harder. And so it was about, I mean, Tim had the file to him late yesterday, so it was maybe a business day.
Awesome.
And he knocked it out real quick for him.
Awesome. I love to hear that. Well, thank you so much for stopping by. Folks, if you want to follow along with more information, you can always check out the knowledge base available over at DuramaxTuner.com. Sean Lynn, I know you've helped out on that quite a bit.
Sounds good.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us today, guys. This has been Paul Wilson
and Chris Ehmke.
Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you again soon.
We are rolling.
Nothing.